Welcome to the Jira Life, the place to find news, events, and interviews with the Atlassian community's movers and shakers. Join our hosts, Alex, Dr. Jira Ortiz, and Rodney, the Jira Guy Nissen, as well as the Jira Amigos in the Peanut Gallery, as we sit down and discuss the latest going on in the Atlassian ecosystem. Because we didn't choose the Jira Life, the Jira Life chose us.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
I know
in
it's
the
only
Peanut
been a
Gallery.
week, but it feels so much longer this week. This week has been crazy long.
I know. I was wondering, can we do this with our eyes closed so I can just take a quick nap? It wouldn't be the first time that I'm asleep during one of these live streams.
No. Usually you have a fair more hours under you, though, so we'll see.
I don't drink coffee. That's my problem. I think I need to get on the coffee train.
I mean, you do work IT. IT without coffee is just not right.
I know.
No.
But
I don't know if that's worse than IT with decaf coffee. I mean, you're just...
I never had either, so I don't know what the effect is. But hey, we got a long episode here, so let's get it started.
All right. Yeah, we got so our guest today, as you notice, it's just us here for now. We actually pre-recorded the segment because time zones. We are trying to get more consistent about when we actually do the live stream. And well, to have the guest in live stream, we had to do something creative. But before we get to our guest section, why don't we talk about some news that came out this week?
Yeah.
Specifically, it is security bulletin season again.
My favorite. I love it when Atlassian makes boo-boos.
This one is pretty interesting. We actually got Bamboo involved, but it's not directly involved. It is a SQL injection attack for Postgres, but it's not even a part of the functionality that Atlassian utilizes. But because Postgres had it in their dependency, Atlassian's including it here for thoroughness, which I personally appreciate.
It's a critical vulnerability, right? It's a 10. It's on the CVSS scale. It's a 10. But the funny thing is, it's not enabled in your Atlassian Bamboo installation. So it's it's a vulnerability, but yet not a vulnerability.
But
so do people need to worry about it or not?
Well, you need to worry about it when the CISO comes to your desk and says, "Hey, I just read this thing in the news. What's the story here?" You have an answer now.
You know what blows my mind, though? I took my first cybersecurity class in 2015, and back then we're like, SQL injections, that's like a thing of the past, right? And we're like, 2015, no, it's not. Here we are 9 years later. SQL injections are clearly not still a thing of the past. It blows my mind how people don't protect against it still.
People have been saying SQL injections are a thing of the past. God, I don't know how long, 15, 20 years, and it's still, no, people still make the same dumb mistake.
It's still the easiest way.
So yeah, we got Bamboo, Bedbucket this time. We've got Confluence. We got Jira.
We got a long list on Jira. It's just... Yeah. Just goes on and on and on and on.
And most of these are denial of services, but we got a few remote code executions, which again are the really nasty ones we do not want. But what you guys think about doing it in this format where they give you just a monthly bulletin versus you getting a new update every week when they're releasing something?
I'd rather get it when it comes out so I can start working on it, because every second counts. My opinion. We got a question.
We do got a question. So, do you guys want to take this, or you want me to take this? I was going to say,
this is a perfect segue into, well, not yet. So, Kabalu, stick around for the whole episode, because our guest of honor, Jimi, this week, we talk a little bit about what happens, right? What happens in think of a Jira 2.0, if you will, because what you want will never happen,
No.
but maybe somebody else might make it happen.
Yeah, we do end up going to that.
I think the analogy here is the toothpaste is basically already out of the tube, and there's no way that you can cram it back into the tube. It's all over the sink.
No.
I mean, with persistency, or where there's a will, there's a way, I would say.
You pretty much have to buy a whole new tube of toothpaste at this point.
Right, which is essentially what I'm getting to, right? We're just gonna make our own.
Yeah, well, so moving on, because we would like to get to that interview, and we are a little bit time crunch for it. Next thing is Atlassian has announced who the featured speakers will be for Team 24 this year. And this is, I'm going to butcher this name, so I apologize now, but I do not watch this. But Jason Sudeikis, who
You got it. You nailed it.
Oh my gosh! So Mark Ruth must be completely geeking out to know
He's
that
not the only one.
You know that? Yeah, but Mark could potentially be backstage, just hanging out with Jason. He's gonna be dressed up in his Ted Lasso attire.
That's usually community leader perk too, and creators count as community leaders for this event. So guess where you're going to be too, Alex?
No, I know, but Mark, I guarantee he's going to be back there somewhere, like behind the curtain. Guaranteed. He's walking out of there with his little sun visor signed by Jason Sudeikis.
So for those who don't know, he is the actor who does play Ted Lasso, who is some sort of coach, and that's the extent of my knowledge. But our good friend of the show, Mark Ruth, I mean, it came up on the show, Ted Lasso did, so yeah, he's absolutely geeking out.
I'm excited.
And by the way, we've also got Dr. Fei Li and Zanny Minton Beddoes. Those two are actually going to be with Mike on a keynote presentation about AI. So that's actually going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, that's the one I'm excited about because that is the buzzword of the past year and a half.
Oh, definitely.
And
so the Jason one's going to be like that pre-keynote one that we did last time?
It's going to be like
the one with James Cameron?
Last year was Van Jones and James Cameron. So I think something with the high wattage Hollywood superstar power that would be Jason's spot.
I'm really curious, like what is the sales pitch like? Jason Sudeikis is getting an email. He's out on the fields of London or England, right? And like, what do you say? Like, hey, we have like the ultimate nerdy conference. Would you like to be there?
Well, I probably win something like that.
I think there is, because there is such a tie into Ted Lasso and coaching and performance of teams, that it would be natural. And I'm sure they paid Atlassian paid a lot more than than what you would get Jason Sudeikis for a 30-second video on Cameo or anything like that. So
I don't. This is like, I'm sure he speaks at a lot of corporate events for working with teams, but like, we got to remember that the actors don't really know. Like it broke my heart when the actors from Silicon Valley had never coded in their lives. And I'm pretty sure Jason Sudeikis has never been a coach before.
True, but teams are I think Mark might disagree. Teams are everywhere, and sometimes there are people that are going to step up as coaches, even if they don't have the technical chops. Some people want those technical scrum masters, but there are a lot of scrum masters out there that haven't written a line of code, and they're still effective because they know how to work with people. And
well, I'm excited. I want to see
ultimately Jason. What you want to do, and it's going to be the same everywhere. It's going to be whether you're coding or producing a TV show or a podcast.
Well, I'm hoping to be in the spit zone on this one.
We're lucky we don't have Captain Kirk here. I mean, William Shatner, I think, would be an entertaining one, but I don't think he would actually know much about teamwork. All right, so moving on. Our third news story of the day is we have a new beta program for our new AI ops feature. I thought I had blown this up already.
That was an interesting article. So Atlassian is seeking beta testers for JSM to look at some of their new AI ops features, and there's some things about alerts and escalations. I think that's what they're trying to test out.
So, what do we think this is the potential to be? Is it going to be one of their announcements at Team 24? Considering we were just talking about that, is this something they're still probably workshopping for later down the road?
I think it's going to be later down the road. They would definitely probably have something to announce at like the next high velocity ITSM conference near the end of the year.
And again, this is your chance to get in on the ground floor before even the creators have a chance to know what's going on. So I've debated filling out this application a couple of times since it crossed my desk. So yeah, those are some highlights from the news story this week. Alex, I think I'm going to kick it off to you.
To do what?
Everyone, to our first pre-recorded segment. We got, is it Yimi or Jimmy?
Your choice. I'm always being mispronounced anyway, so I call myself Jimmy. So whatever you want to use is fine by me.
I mean, if that's what you call yourself, that's what's good enough for me. So we have Jimi Wikman here with us today. Before you in, Jimi, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so is there any particular part you want to know? I know when I talked to Alex before, he wanted to know my background.
From birth all the way to today.
From birth all the way back.
Take us through.
It's all weird, so I don't know if we want to go that deep. Then maybe no one wants to watch this one. But let me tell you a little bit of my personality and what I want to do. So I'm Swedish. I was born and raised here in Sweden, and I'm a midnight child, so I'm kind of weird. I got to choose which day I was born, or rather my parents got to choose. I was born in Stockholm, the capital city here in Sweden, but I moved up to the north, or the middle of Sweden actually, which is what here in Stockholm they consider to be north. And I grew up on a farm. So I'm a country boy. So I had cows and horses and chickens and all of that. And I never knew really what I wanted to do in life. I was never interested in computers or games or anything when that came in late 80s and early 90s. And by chance, I ended up in the local library. They were digitalizing their books. And it was insanely boring. So it was mind-numbing. So we went down to the newly created IT desk that they had created. And that's where my passion for the internet or for web design was actually born. So I actually started making web pages in what was called Netscape Composer back in 1996. So that's where I started. And I had everything like that. I went into digital design, visual design. So I did that on the back burner for quite a many years. And I started to charge for things because people requested me to build things for them. And at the end, I could not really hide it. I mean, I made too much money, even though I didn't charge anything. So I decided that I should start my own company. So I did that in 2006. So I did a triple one there. So I started my own business. I had a child, and I started studying at the higher education full time at the same time. Then, so I did about 18 hours a day of doing all of that. And I started to look into Jira around 2010, 9, somewhere there, because I needed to have a project management tool, and that one came up, but I didn't really like it. It didn't fit my need. In 2011, my younger brother died. He froze to death outside in the snow, and it was a very, very hard time for me. So I did a yes man. So I said yes to everything. Anything anyone asked me, can you do that? I said yes. So I did a lot of crazy things. I went swimming 3 kilometers in open water for good causes, and eventually I ended up on a presentation. A customer of mine said, "Can you not give a speech on this new thing that you are talking about, this psychological web design?" And I was bullied in school, so I had real terror when it came to presentation. But I had my yes man going on, so I said, yes, of course I will come. So I did a presentation, and it's online also, as you can see how horrible that one was. And from that presentation, we had the person in the audience, one of the person was responsible for all of e-commerce in Sweden at that time. So he said, you have to come and present this down in the largest e-commerce event that we have in Sweden. So you have to go on stage and do that. And I said, of course, yes. And we also had a new company that is now one of the largest fintech companies in Sweden called Klarna. The CEO there also said, you have to come to us. So I did that. And I ended up getting a job at Klarna. So they said that, yeah, you are awesome. We want to have you here as a web designer. And after I did the presentation for the big event for e-commerce, the person I did the presentation with said also, have you signed yet? And I said, no, I haven't signed yet. I will do that when I get home. And he said, no, you won't do that. You have to sign with us instead. We want you to work with us. So I had to choose then between a fairly new company and a consultant agency. That was the other one. So I kind of ping-ponged between them, and then I decided I probably want to work with more customers than just one product. So I chose not the Jira Life, but I chose the consultant life. And at that consultant firm, they had Jira and Confluence. It was fairly new to them. And I think it took about 6 months before I got involved in being the Confluence responsible. So it was me and another colleague that handled then our instance. And that's where my Atlassian journey started. Then the Jira Life shows me eventually, and I can also tell you, I started doing, I told you about, I did web design, right? And I did visual design. And I hosted my own server. So I had to learn Linux, and I had to learn how to actually secure my servers, because I actually got a letter of cease and desist from Bank of America saying that we don't want you to do more phishing attacks on us. So I actually had to learn before the rest of the hosting businesses here in Sweden even learned how to protect themselves against that. So that was probably around 2002 or something like that. So
and you're being very modest. What about some of your current endeavors?
What I'm doing right now. So right now I am right now I'm doing a lot, Alex. So last year I quit. I ended my career as a consultant. I said that I'm now a little bit tired of implementing awesome stuff, and then when I leave, everyone ignores it and they build crap again. So I said I want to be now in a firm that allow me to build the best Atlassian solution in the world. So I'm employed now at a company called Cinch, and last year I took over the entire Atlassian platform within that company. And I did about 800 to 1,000 hours outside of business hours. And we are now on a very good path to actually getting to becoming the best Atlassian solution in the world. So my days right now is I'm sitting now, we have weekly meetings with Atlassian, for example, because we are doing some big changes in our setup. And I'm planning now to do a cloud migration, or cloud move rather, as soon as we get the financial decision for it. So we are actually going to do a lift and shift, and we're not going to migrate. So that's going to be a lot different than what most people are doing at the time. And I'm also, because last year I got totally buried in work. I wanted to give it my all. So now when things are better, I have a little bit more time. So I'm focusing now a little bit more on my YouTube channel. So I'm pushing out a little bit more videos.
I see that. A lot of videos are coming out of
you. Yeah. And I'm focusing a little bit on asset right now, because I had some people to ask me questions and they wanted specific videos for assets. So I decided to focus a little bit on that one, because there is not a lot of documentation for it. And since the people that built assets and the old Riada team, I was a lot in their office, and we talked a lot about assets when they were building it, because I was the ace for the Stockholm area at the time, and we were often in their offices to have our meetings. So I'm a little bit focused on that one right now, and I'm a little bit bummed. I'm editing now this week's changes that they have, so they rolled out even more limitation for assets. So I'm a little bit bummed out, and I'm going to have a little chat to Atlassian about that one.
Yeah, Atlassian, they have their core values. I've been questioning a lot of their core values this week as well myself. It's an interesting company how like the bigger they get, right? I was in a world tour with Mark Cruz, I guess 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
Almost a month ago now, and he was talking about like, hey, hey, I joined Atlassian in 2019. It was like a 3,000 person company, and now they're like 12,000, and so they're growing exponentially. But as an end user and as a passionate end user, you really now start to see how their core values are getting a little bit grayer.
Yeah, I think as they have grown also, they have a little bit less control. So I think it's more individual groups that are forgetting that, those core values, and they are making some questionable things, but they are usually kind of small, like the phishing of email addresses. If you want to see the aligned videos, for example, that makes absolutely no sense since they are public anyway. And they also are starting to implement a lot of limitations. And in the beginning, they were hidden. And so I called them out on and say that this is not aligned with don't F the users, because if you're hiding it and my service is actually disrupted if I break the limit.
Well, that's another core value they have. They're an open company.
Yes, so I think they are suffering a little bit from they're growing too fast, and it's difficult to maintain that core identity, especially since they have the policy to work from anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then it's harder to keep those values alive when people are not meeting physically as often as when you are on remote.
Yeah.
I mean,
I definitely see it a lot, and I think the brand.
Yeah,
it is, and it's been a long change coming.
Yeah,
I called them out on it in 2022, and it's not seen a lot of change from it.
I was gonna say my big one this week is I'm doing enterprise renewals for one of my teams, and it's a pretty substantial, north of $1 million like renewal. And I have an email from Atlassian telling me, he's like, you better pay by this X date or we're shutting it off. I'm like,
Yeah.
what kind of a partnership, customer relationship do you plan to keep at that if you're threatening all these other teams, right? I can't imagine I'm the only one that's being threatened. I'm probably the only customer though with a voice, so not a smart move from Atlassian, but we'll see what they do.
This is also where you have that, because those are probably automated, right?
So I'm working with an individual, an employee from Atlassian is telling me you need to pay this thing by a specific date, otherwise we're pulling the plug on you. And I'm like, not how the corporate.
Yeah, you're an enterprise customer. Yeah, those are, and I also hear that they have quite strict internal rules, so they're not very flexible because they are being tied down by their own systems also. So marketing and sales they are fairly new, right? Marketing and sales didn't even exist 5-6 years ago. Then it was all through the resellers. And now they are building systems that are kind of tying them down, so they cannot be flexible about it.
Yeah. And then you got the thing with like the automation rules, right? Like automation rules, charging for that. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but have you seen all the promotional material that has just been plaguing the Atlassian interface?
Yes.
That I was not used to, right? Like I can't even click anywhere now without acknowledging that there's something, or there's just so much pushing of agendas on there.
Yeah, and they are also cannibalizing themselves, right? They are targeting your work management for Trello users, for example. That's like, why would you do that? That's like, why would you like to steal from one product to another? That doesn't make sense. It would make sense if you would say that extend your capability with Trello with functionality that like planning. So you want to have like your software with plans, or you want to have with asset management and support through your service management, connect them somehow. But to say that this tool that is fairly equal to Trello, let's just switch you over. Especially since they are now charging for Trello and your work management is still free. So I don't know if they are trying to get everyone over to your work management and then smack us with a bill. I'm not really sure.
I think what's happening is we talked a little bit about this last week when we did this Trello conversation, right? But what I suspect is they were in this like huge path to growth, right? Get users, get a lot of customers, right? And I think they've achieved that, right? They have, what was it? The last year in April, they told us it was 250,000 customers. I think they're well over the 300,000 mark, right? But it ain't cheap. It ain't cheap to run this business.
No, it's not.
Right. And so I think they're slowly realizing like, oh man, we can't be giving this stuff out at scale.
Yeah, I think they are starting to understand now when things are starting to cost more also. So they are pulling back on resources. And what you talked about with the automation, I'm starting to feel that they are starting to realize that their cloud services, they haven't been built for scale. And they are now realizing that the resources it costs to actually run these hundreds of thousands of automations and millions.
I would say hundreds of millions.
Yeah, but just for one instance, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well,
it's very costly now. And that scares me a little bit because if you cannot scale, especially if you, like me, are moving into assets, then if I cannot scale that properly, then I will be forced sooner or later to actually move over to a more capable tool. And that means that if I need to move over to a competition and they have also task management, why would I then stay with Atlassian?
Yeah.
So now they have their big competitor is failing because they don't have a UI that people actually like to use. But if they fix that, then Atlassian will have a run for their money, I think.
And that's such a great point that you bring that up. I'm glad that you're talking, because immediately yesterday when I got this, the cease and desist from an Atlassian type of threat, I was like, what's going to happen? Like, what would have to happen for a competitor to come in and dethrone Jira or Atlassian? Yeah. And the first thing that I'm thinking about is you got to be able to, whoever creates an alternative to Jira must create a streamlined pipeline to import from Jira without any hiccups. Like that, I think is a non-negotiable.
I mean, early Jira had built-in importers for other systems specifically for that reason. And there was a point about 6-7 years ago where they said, as of this release, we are no longer supporting the importers. And that's the point where they got big enough that they didn't feel they were trying to rob anything. They felt they were the leaders at that point.
And that is dangerous to think that way. And I'm worried that they are starting to snow globe themselves. They are so big now that they kind of exist within their own ecosystem. But it only takes one tool to actually either have both scalability and a good user experience. If you combine those two, they will be a serious threat to Atlassian. Right now, you have tools that are either great UIs but not very scalable, or you have things that are extremely scalable but suck when it comes to UI and UX. And
so what are your thoughts on like Monday and ClickUp and Asana and all that?
Yeah, those are they have great user experiences, but they don't have actually the scalability and they don't have the traction. So Monday, for example, I have never seen anyone here in Europe using Monday, for example. So they are still very localized in certain areas. And Asana, they are like work management. They are a very specific type of people that want to use it. So designers love them. We have program managers love them. But they need to have all the bits and pieces, right? So they need to have for the developers, they need to cater to the management, they need to cater to the designers.
I've always been of the idea that the only true competitor that I see to Jira today that's affordable, that's attainable, is like Azure DevOps, right? Because you also have like your version 1 and your rallies, but those are so expensive and so unattainable by the common individual that they're not really in a classification that I would care for. But then you have people like AHA. So AHA is a really big competitor in the product discovery space. And now they have like AHA Agile. I haven't tried it. You're starting to see some of these companies, like even ServiceNow, from my understanding, is they're bringing in Agile-like capabilities into ServiceNow. So then really makes you wonder, like, what is going to happen in the next 2, 3, 5 years?
It only takes one of those to actually fill more voids. So AHA is a great discovery tool, but it doesn't do anything else.
Until now.
So that one have more capability for it. And so you have the task management and you have the project management or even resource management. Then that's going to be very serious. ServiceNow is a very capable tool, but the UI sucks. So if you actually dive into it, it has a lot more functionality and a lot more great functionality than Jira. But the common users never find it because the UI is terrible. So all of these tools have the capability to actually step up and become serious competitor. It just takes that they need to go from being a singular tool like AHA or like a generic tool like Monday to actually be semi-focused and have multiple tiers. So they need to be having multiple products for it. So like Jira, when it started, it was just very generic, right? It's task management for teams. That's basically what it was. And then they focus on the developers. And then they realized there are gaps now. So let's add more tools to that one. And today they have the biggest flora and the biggest scale, or the biggest, they have all the functionalities basically from, not really from project management, I wouldn't say. From traditional project management, they don't have everything yet. But they have basically from everything from an operational level to post-operation, I would say that they have now. And that is what most IT teams need.
I think the key here, and what allowed the early Jira to gain enough traction, that now we have all these bespoke Jira iterations that cater to all these different verticals, is whatever replaces Jira has to be ultra flexible. Jira only got where it was because past Jira guys and gals looked at the platform and said, this isn't only capable of bug tracking. If I make the modifications and do the work, I can make this work for the IT team or the marketing team or whoever. I have that control and that flexibility to adapt this to what I need. So I think the next tool has to nail that. And once a tool is able to nail that, and if they have a better UI and all the other things we talked about, it's going to be game over.
I agree.
But yeah, no, so Rodney, yeah, I 100% agree, right? But now the only thing that comes to my mind is like, okay, so what if you flip the script a little bit, right? But what if you have a group that's actually making the tool with all that in mind already, right? Because you had to hack Jira. But what happens if you make something that doesn't need to be hacked and actually just works for multiple teams by design?
I mean, that's also going to be powerful, but it's a lot of work up front. Jira's benefit
Jimmy, you got time,
is, right? Yeah.
How hard can it be?
Yeah, Jira's benefit is people are willing to put the work into it. So Atlassian didn't have to initially. And they went, oh, that's an interesting use case. I'll buy that from you.
Yeah, but that's kind of its curse also, right? That because it's so flexible and because it's so easy to modify, it also gets the reputation of being bad. Not because of the tool, but because people have built things that are basically Frankenstein's monsters. So I often hear people saying that Jira sucks for developers. And you go, show me what it is that is not working. And then they show me, and I go like, why in God's name have anyone done this to you? This is like handicapping you, and you have like a 14-page manual to create a story. You shouldn't even be in Jira. You should be in your IDE and working from there. So of course you hate this one, but it's not because of the tool. It's because people that don't understand how other people work have built ways of working that doesn't make any sense. And that happens all the time. And that is the backside of having it very flexible. And that is also, if someone wants to build a competitor that is extremely flexible, they have to think about that part also. Because let's face it, the majority of the people that actually use Jira are not competent enough to understand how they should build a good way of working, because they don't have an experience or a background where they actually have worked in a way that actually functions. So if you think about everyone that you worked with, how many do you know that have said that for my entire career, I worked in the same way, and this is the way that development, for example, should work? I don't think we've ever met anyone, because everyone adopts to whatever is built in the company that they're currently working in, and that's usually crap.
Right. No, you bring up so many good points that have been on top of my mind for like the last 6 months. So I read a lot of books, as you can see, and on another shelf in front of me, I don't have like business books like I do here, but over there I have software development books, right? Clean code, software architecture, right? And unit testing. And what I'm trying to focus here by next 6 months of my life here is how do I become a great software engineer, not a coder, but a software engineer, to understand the way software should be developed, to then influence how a tool guides and coaches a team through a life cycle of software development? Because right now Jira does such a great little thing of the big picture, because DevOps is an evolving thing that gets folded into Jira daily, but it's still not where it needs to be. There's still a lot of gaps in with the concepts and principles of DevOps and how they intermingle and intertwine with the users and the developers and Jira and all that, right? So I think this is, again, like I've been mentioning, right, like something that's been piquing my curiosity for a while, where I'm excited. I want to try to build something that dethrones Atlassian one day.
And the sad part is that if you are a developer, odds are that you should never even look into Jira, because you have all the tools to just have it built on. You can transition based on when you push and pull data. So in most
100%.
IDs, you already have connection with Jira. So if I were a developer, or if I worked as a developer now, I would just open up my IDE where I work in code, and I would just open the Jira tab. I would select a task. I would talk to my team, what do I need to do for this one, and how should we solve it? I would create
But
a
that's
pull
not really
request.
the problem
It would
that I
change the
see.
status.
But that's not the problem I see, right? Because that fundamental mechanic, I think it's pretty well versed. And I think a lot of people, from a behavior perspective, they don't do it. Why? I don't know. Like, they just choose not to be disciplined. But the biggest problem that I see is knowing what to work on. And I think that's where we usually have the biggest conflict, is like everybody's got like an opinion of what a priority is. And there's never like a vision or a mission for what and when, like roadmaps and stuff like that. And even there, Jira sucks. Like, Jira does not do a great job at cross-team collaboration and figuring out these priorities.
And the biggest reason for that one is that it's an agile tool, and in agile you don't have requirements. That's the biggest problem for it. And I would say 90% of all IT projects, and I just focus on IT projects now, fail because you don't have a requirement process, and the teams are not well disciplined enough to actually collaborate and communicate. So we still have that. Even if the person sits in the team, they have a problem actually expressing, this is the business need and this is what I need, and they cannot really translate that one to technical speak. So you have that gap. I usually show this like in an 8, and you have in the middle there where the cross is, and this is where requirement happens. So this is like the translator in the UN between two warring factions. If you don't actually can translate properly, you will have war. And what happens is that the developers will sit there and wondering, I'm not really sure what I should build. You said I should build this. Doesn't make any sense technically, and I have a hard time communicating with you because you don't understand me. You get frustrated. So requirements for me is a big passion, and also the communication back to business from the IT team in terms of like estimations. A lot of people are terrified about estimation, or they use story points. That is like, yeah, you could have just told me that you have 2 brown socks and a blue one. It will help me just as much as telling me this arbitrary value.
I got a buddy.
So that is a pain point for most teams, I think.
I have a buddy, his name's Tamer, and I work with him very closely daily. And he told me something that immediately your face popped up into my mind. And he's like, Scrum is dead. Scrum is dead. And he has a thesis as to why story points are the worst thing ever to have come into existence. And I'm like, I need to get you and Tamer in the same room. So it's going to happen. I'm going to get him, you and me, on my channel. We're going to have a little brawl.
But I think that is a big, that is one of the biggest weaknesses, I think, in the Atlassian suite today, is that you don't have a natural place for that, because you either throw it up as a card, as if you were working Scrum or Kanban, and you have that conversation within the team, then you're good, but you don't really need Jira other than like a placeholder for it. Or you have the more traditional way, or the old way, where you actually write it down like in specification style, and then you are in Confluence, and then you have like this little gap. And the other gap that we have, that I'm suffering a lot from, is that we don't really have escalation in your service management. So it's very difficult to have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 movement, because they are usually in different projects. So that's also another pain point for the support teams, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I think Robbie is, to go back to the next evolution of Jira, right? I think Robbie's kind of like on the right point, like maybe even creating like an open source version of Jira, right? Where, because I'm trying to articulate thoughts, right? There's so much just coming through my head right now, right? But like, I feel like the tool is only 50% or maybe 25% of the problem, right? Or part of the solution, right? Where I see the biggest gap is that individuals just simply don't know what they don't know. And there is no clear guide on like, here's how you create software. Here's how you create anything, right? Like everybody's just kind of winging it. They bring best practices from old jobs, from old roles, old positions, right? And you just have like a hodgepodge of like ideas. But every time that somebody reaches out to me, whether it's in the comments or like during my live streams and whatnot, the most common theme I see is like, is this correct? Or how do I do this? And I'm like, well, there's no silver bullet, but I kind of feel like there should always be a silver bullet, right? That I don't have an easy answer to usually tell people what should be a story, what should be a task. I'm like, well, that's because nobody defines it, right? It's whatever you want it to be. But I wonder what would happen if we started the development of a tool with the best practice or the theory in mind correctly, and then the tool to implement.
How do you usually do with your instances when you take over ownership of them? Do you define things like tasks and stories?
So when I enter an engagement, So when I enter an engagement, I start with basics, right? I start with who's who in the zoo. That's my first MO, right? Who is in a position of influence? Who's in a position of authority? Decision makers, right? Because the biggest friction that I typically see, again, Jira's awesome, right? Any tool, Monday, all of them do the same thing. They organize, right? But that's not the problem. Like, knowing what you're supposed to work on is half the problem. Where I usually see the most friction or the most reason why a tool like Jira doesn't work for teams is because you get to a point where you have a conflict. And the conflict resolution is challenging. You don't know who to make the call. I worked on a team a few years ago where the CTO, right? This is the top decision maker. Somebody presented this is the solution we should do because X, Y, Z. What about ABC? And the CTO was like, I like that too. Let's go this way. And then I was like, wait, which one is it though? You just said yes to both paths that are night and day. And he's like, I don't know. You guys decide. I'm like, no, you get paid to decide. Right? You're at the top for a reason. And like, so I like to start there, right? Because if you don't have a chief engineer, there's always going to be conflict and friction and ambiguity. And it's really for that main, so that's where I usually start. Then I work down from there, right? Then I'm like, okay, what issue types do you have? What should they mean? When are they supposed to be used? What's the difference between an epic and a story? What's the difference between a story and a subtask? Do we need initiatives? Do we need themes? Like, so I start with all the definitions, priorities, how to do story points. So I start with defining everything, and then we build out mock-ups in Jira in like a sandbox.
Then you work kind of like me. I just don't care about the CTO. I just say, either you tell me what you want, or I build it whatever I think is appropriate, and then we can talk about it from there. So I tend to build the standards first, and I say, this is the way work processes work. I work with many work processes, and this is what I have set up for other ways, and this is how it works. And then I say, now it's yours. You are a developer group. You should decide how the development process works, and you should know then what other processes are you connected to. So for example, you hand over to test. So then you need to know what do they need, so you can actually meet their demand. And you need to tell the requirement analyst or the designers or the product managers what you need from them, so they know also what requirements you have on them. And if you do that exercise, then suddenly people start realizing, wait a minute, we are working really backwards here because we don't even involve part of the business, or we don't care about the testers and stuff like that. So I always smack people saying that if you can't decide, if you don't have a process, I will make one. And then you can start from there.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I was talking about the CTO thing, though, I wasn't talking about like the decision to design Jira, but rather once you're using the tool, the impediments, right? Like it doesn't matter if you create this great schedule or you've planned the perfect sprint or whatever. There's always going to be some adversary that's going to stop progress. And the chief, or again, a chief engineer, right? It doesn't really matter who, but there needs to be a decision maker that helps push the team forward and unblock things. And usually I see that companies are like, either maybe because they're trying to be mindful of everybody's like emotions and feelings or whatever, like there's just nobody that makes the hard call. And you need somebody to make the hard call.
Yeah, and I always tend to create guilds. I call them guilds, or areas of responsibility. So everyone that works with a certain discipline. So if you have testers and you have developers and designers, then I form a group with them and saying, you are now invited to be my, basically my stakeholders. So you will tell me how you need to work in the tools, regardless of which of the tools there is. And then we together design which one are your issue types, for example, which ones are your workflows. And then we try to make sure that everyone understands the bigger picture, because you cannot build, for example, a developer workflow in isolation, because it has to fit with everything else. So then you need to teach them and say, you are now down here, but if you think about what you are doing before you get a development decision and what happens after, we need to take them into consideration also. So how do we best help our colleagues that are on the other places so their job becomes easier without compromising our own? And that one is very uncommon because most teams are so focused on their own work that they forget that you are working with thousands of other people in this organization, and you're dependent on them to work with you, and they are also dependent on you working with them. So let's make sure that you understand the full picture. And when they do that, it's usually very easy. They go like, aha, so if I don't do this manual task that I hate to do, it takes me 5 minutes, I will actually save someone else's work like 2 days. Then I can actually do that, because then it makes sense for me, because I care about my colleagues. But if you just say, do this manual task that you hate, that takes 5 minutes, and they will go, no, I don't want to, because they don't understand why. And that is also very difficult to do without help.
Yeah, we can continue this conversation all day, Jimi. We've got one thing we'd like to do with you before we call it.
Are we ending already? Did we for our time? I thought we had an hour.
I do want to ask Jimi the quick Quizlet before we let him go.
All right, go ahead.
All right, so Jimi, quick Quizlet, how it works, we'll ask you 5 questions, usually in format of A or B. The idea is to give your opinion as quickly as possible, and then you have a little bit of time to explain the opinion. So we'll start with an easy one first. Ideal vacation spot, mountains or beach?
Mountains. I'm from the north. Heat is not my thing, and you don't have a lot of cold beaches, so mountains is nice.
All right. So Star Trek or Star Wars?
Obviously Star Trek.
Obviously. That's the only right answer.
Obviously, there's no competition. I like Star Wars, don't get me wrong, but it's not even comparable to Star Trek. Star Trek is the best.
All right. Ebook or physical books?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I've actually stopped using reading books because I'm now too damaged. My circadian movements is actually so long that I will skip entire pages. I used to be a speed reader when I was younger. I could read several books a week, but now I'm actually having trouble slowing down so I can actually read them. But if I do, I have a Kindle, so I prefer to read on my Kindle today.
Sorry, don't mind the books in my shelf then.
Yeah, I had like hundreds of books when I was a kid also. I pestered my poor library and read everything that they had. But yeah, I'm having a hard time slowing down now. And my eyes are too used at scanning.
All right, so 4th question, is water wet?
No. It's only wet if you have it on you. And I think it's only wet when it actually dissipates from your body, right? Before that, it's just a solid that you have on you for some reason, like sand. So sand is not wet. So no, it's not wet.
Is the thumb considered a finger?
That is a tricky one. Yes, it is a finger, but it is an opposing finger, right? So it is actually an anti-finger if you think about it correctly. But it's still a digit, two joint digit that you have, but it is the opposite of a finger.
I swear I just got Alex looking at his hand.
Go like, what?
I'm contemplating life now. Like, what is the meaning? Anti-finger. Can I just be anti-hungry?
Yes,
I don't know. Can you?
Jimmy, you should put a book on like just philosophies of life.
I could.
Your
Maybe we can have
memoir.
an open source one.
Have you started writing your memoir? by any
I
chance?
can't read my memoirs. It will actually be pulled. I'll be working at a hotel, and I have so many celebrity stories and things that happens in hotels. So if I write that one, all the hotels in the world will go bankrupt. So no, I can't write my memoirs.
Well, in speaking of hotels, is there any luck that we'll be able to see you in Las Vegas in a couple of months?
Not this year. Atlassian wants me there next year. So next year I will probably be in Las Vegas if everything goes as planned. But this year we can't actually, we don't have the time to actually travel there. There might be that my boss will be there. He has gotten a ticket. So we'll see if he has the time to fly up there. He's from the US. But I'm not allowed to travel probably for another 9-10 months or so. I might go traveling a little bit abroad for training purposes, going to Singapore and Brazil perhaps, but not to Las Vegas this year.
We'll sink you into Mexico.
Yeah.
That's not a problem.
I mean, that's a common route, isn't it?
It is. I mean,
I can just swim over. It's a quick swim.
I kid. Please don't send ice on me.
Yeah.
I don't know, or am I associated with any tunnels underneath Mexican-U.S. border?
Yeah, you're doing the. I promise I have no knowledge of such things.
No affiliation. I'm not related to El Chapo or any known drug cartels.
We'll talk about that later.
We believe you.
We believe, dude. If I was, you think I'd live like in a mansion?
I mean, have you seen your house?
Yeah, it is pretty nice.
but your house now, Alex, isn't that just the cover house that you use to when on your daytime, and then you go back to your mansion in the evening?
In the evening, yeah, I'm like Batman.
This is a studio. No. It's not a house; it's a studio.
Built in your living room.
One of our goals is to do kind of what Sean. Have you heard what Sean did to his house?
I don't think I have.
Okay, so Sean, we were bonding on the train in San Francisco, right? And he tells me like his house, he converted like the first floor of his house to be the office spaces of Release Team. And so my wife and I have like this goal of like getting like a warehouse. Like I want a warehouse, but we want to convert the warehouse and have like a living quarters, because we just want a place to like build and create stuff and just, be engineers, but then not have to leave it either. And just be like, I want to live at the warehouse and just have like a place where we live, but also where we play and where we just have fun all day. That's the ultimate goal.
I mean, that sounds like the dream, man. It definitely sounds like the dream.
It all right now, it just starts with the 3-car garage. We're cleaning out the whole garage right now to turn it into a workshop.
Yeah, but shouldn't we have like a Jira house somewhere, like 5,000 square feet of just offices and living spaces, and then we have houses around that.
If I could get the Jira or the Atlassian Creator Space going, maybe, but I have yet to convince Atlassian or others to grant me a grant for that.
You can nag at them together to make sure that you get it. I mean, if we get 40, 50 people together, content creators, then we should make it happen.
I mean, we're starting to.
I proposed an idea that we should have like a creator's room, right? Where, or maybe like a creator's office hours where we just get together and we talk about like best practices of creating content, right? Like something that even you, Jimmy, can benefit from. But they didn't get a lot of traction. So I might need to find key content creators that are actually serious about creating content, that we got to create some sort of an alliance or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Jimi, it's been great having you on. Thank you so much for being flexible as we've been trying to figure out how to do this.
Thank you for having me. It was great fun talking to you.
Before we let go, you want to tell everyone how they can find you if they're interested in learning more about your Jira philosophy?
About my Jira philosophy, yeah, I have, like I've already said, I'm pushing a little bit on my YouTube channel now. So Jimi Wikman Official is the name of it. And since I had too many other Jimi Wikman already created, so I went for that one. I also have the Atlassian community that will be on pause now. We are waiting for an update for it. And then I'm going to rebuild that community and make it really, really cool. So there's a lot of new features that will come for that one. So that one will probably happen this fall when I have more time for it. Other than that, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. You'll probably find me on every social media ever existed. I tend to be one of those first adopters. I like to be everywhere and try it out and criticize it and then leave. So I might not be as active everywhere. And of course, I'm also on my personal website, jimiwikman.se, that I'm also going to rebuild and going to rebrand it completely and refocus it a little bit. And that is my playground, so it's messy as hell because I'm building everything there. So everything that I try out, design-wise, code-wise, that one I build there. So that's why I write my code and test my ideas out.
All right. Well, again, thank you for coming. Alex, any closing thoughts?
Yimi, I'll reach out to you because I want to. Ronnie cut us off, but I want to keep going.
Summer of Atlassian 2.0, man. Or is it 3.0?
I think it's 22, 23. It'll be 3.0.
Yeah. Make it a thing.
Sounds good. You can have a daily philosophical thoughts with Alex and Jimmy.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
We'll get everybody worked up. And then we'll open source the next Jira.
Sounds good.
All right.
But then
All
we
right.
will have to name it and properly, right? So we cannot use the Jira anymore.
Obviously, clearly, yeah.
Oh, it's obviously Jira.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking of pulling Elon Musk, not Jira.
Okay. That's a good one. Let's do that.
Mothra.
Mothra.
Or, you know what? What is it? So if the Japanese call, or if they call Jira after Gojira, then and for Godzilla, what's Japanese for King Kong?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know what that one is.
Let's find
We
out.
have to check that one out. But otherwise, Mothra is a good one. That is easy for people to say in different parts of the country.
Mm-hmm.
Or in the world, perhaps we should say.
Goji Kong. We just call it Kong. Goji Kong is King Kong. They call it Gojira. So we're just going to call it Kong.
Japanese has a lot of good words otherwise. You have the word for, what's it, when you eat not because you're hungry, but because your mouth is lonely. That one I like.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. We'll keep the conversation going. And
have a good one, guys. And thank you for having me.
Hey, we're back.
We're back.
We changed clothes all of a sudden.
We're very quick.
And I'm getting off of mute to say that was our interview with Jimi. We were doing this because we thought that Jimi was going to be asleep at this time. Apparently, he is so very, very jazzed up that he just wanted to actually do this from the peanut gallery, apparently. So, okay.
That was fun, though. I enjoyed it. I did not expect that many people to stick around, but hopefully we can make kaiju a thing. So if anybody wants to join the cause, let me know. Also, starting a GoFundMe for the warehouse if anybody wants to help that cause as well.
I think it says something that our first instinct automatically is to go to like monster names. Like our first instincts all are giant big monsters.
Well, yeah, so we'll just have kaiju.
We're kind of geared that way because we come from the tech realm, right? In terms of languages, there was a precursor language, and they used the letters BCPL for it, and B came out. And then when Kernahan and Ritchie were trying to make, they were at AT&T, they were trying to make a successor to B. They kind of went to the next letter in that language, and thus C was born. And so no one ever kind of went through and kind of finished out that language, but
they all went C++, and
they went C++, and then all of a sudden Java comes along, and then
we did get F# one time.
Yes.
The fact that you know that, Bob, well, I shouldn't be surprised at this point. I know you for too long.
And it's not me. It's being corroborated by our friend and actually guest next week, Matt Dorr. So
yeah, Matt Dorr. We're gonna have a fun time with Mr. Matt. I got to meet him a month ago, and so I'm excited to do a follow-up conversation.
So yeah, I am super excited about that. As we know, Matt's been making a lot of moves here lately, and it'd be interesting to get his perspective on the state of the Atlassian ecosystem and community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a good follow-up too, because we had him on right when he had that giant life-changing event, and so it'd be good to get that feedback.
Yep.
That's me. Well, folks, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I know it was a little bit thought-provoking, but Jimmy has some interesting thoughts, and I was also on a rampage because of Atlassian that day. So if anybody wants to join us to do like a part 2 or part 3, or has any thoughts on what we talked about today, do let us know. We do still have a lot of open seats for the second half of the year for the Jira Life. So if any of you here in the Peanut Gallery, I know Damien, you're kind of new to the community here. But yeah, if anybody wants to join us, we do have some new slots here that are going to be opening up starting June, right?
I think June is kind of starting to get filled in. We might actually be looking for new people around July.
Okay, wow.
But yeah, keep an eye on the LinkedIn page. We will be announcing when we're opening up speakers. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, take it away, Mr. Rodney.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Jira Life. Our hosts are Alex, Dr. Jira Ortiz, and Rodney, the Jira Guy, Nissen. You can find Alex on YouTube at 8Tech Tutorials, and Rodney's blog is found over at thejiraguy.com. Our producers are Robert King Bob Wen and Lena Ortiz. You can catch us live as we record this podcast every Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on YouTube at The Jira Life. Be sure to join us and our other Jira Amigos of the Peanut Gallery every week to ask your questions, let us know your comments, and just tell us what you're up to. But if you can't join us live, you can still catch the replay over on YouTube. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell while you're watching. We're also available as a podcast over on Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you listen to it and think it deserves a rating, we would very much appreciate it, as it will help others discover the Jira Life. Because we didn't choose the Jira Life. The Jira Life chose us.